Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 2022 DocLands Documentary Film Festival. My name is Shakira Refos, and I'm from the education team. I'm here with Matt Edwards and Jordan Barrow. Nice to meet you guys.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too.
Welcome, welcome to this Q&A. Co-directors of Our Words Collide. Now, we're so happy to have screened your film here at DocLands Documentary Film Festival. I know that you all opened in Santa Barbara, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about what it felt like to premiere this project that you've been working so hard on. It's clearly a passion project. What did it feel like to have such a great premiere and the responses that came from it?
Yeah, I mean, it's I can go first and then Matt can jump in as well, but it was an incredible experience. You know, I think we're so fortunate to have three of the poets, Amari, Jason, and Virginia, join for the premiere. And this film is really, we like to always say that it's all of ours because it's such a personal story for each of them. They shared their lives, their families, their poetry with us. And so I think we really are so mindful of wanting to make it a communal experience, I guess, anytime where we're able to have them be a part of the process. So having them at the premiere was incredible. We had Diane Luby Lane and Samuel Curtis from Get Lit, who are also producers on the film. And then Rosario Dawson, who has been just an incredible advocate of the project and has been so generous with her time. So she was there. So it was really a big familial kind of get together to celebrate the movie. And the response from audiences was really positive, and it seemed to really connect with folks. So yeah, couldn't have asked for a better experience up there.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, for the better part of 2 years, it was basically just me and Jordan. It'd be us, camera, and each of our poets that we followed, you know, for a year. And then we sat and edit for almost a year, which was quite crazy because of COVID. And just being able to show our film for the first time to an audience in a theater was so incredible. And it was just so reaffirming of all the hard work that the poets had put in, all their amazing poems, and they were just also giving. And just to be able to share with the world for the first time was a really incredible experience.
What I'm wondering, why Get Lit? What was your access to this programming and your interest in the five poets from this specific program?
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to meet Get Lit about 5 years ago. We were working on the March for Our Lives event in DC with the students from Parkland. Mm-hmm. And so under our purview was doing some PSAs that were essentially promoting sensible gun reforms. And we were looking to work with some young people to voice these PSAs, and was fortunate enough to be linked up with Get Lit. And had, you know, not a real sense of the organization before that time, but I think we just immediately fell in love with what they were doing, with the message that they're promoting, with the poets themselves, and how inspiring and informed they were, even at such a young age. And I think we were just immediately drawn to that. And I think that's when, from that first experience, we just started a dialogue about wanting to figure out a way to amplify their message. And it naturally just progressed from, we did some more PSAs with them, and then eventually turned into this feature film. And really worked with the Get Lit team to figure out who would be the right poets that would make sense to work with us over the course of the better part of 2 years to tell their stories. So it's been such a rewarding experience, but it's been one that really took, you know, time and development and earning their trust, because obviously working with young people, working with an organization that has worked so hard to develop, to develop themselves, it took a lot of trust for them. So I think it's been a really wonderful experience.
You touched on the trust bit briefly, and I'm kind of wondering, You know, I work in education. I work in the education department here at the California Film Institute, and we produce DocLands and the Mill Valley Film Festival. And it's not easy to gain the trust of teenagers, and furthermore, to get them to be fully themselves and vulnerable. Could you share with the audience a little bit of, like, you know, your strategy to getting to know these students in an authentic way?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It was basically building relationships with them. You know, there would be days that we go up and not even film and just hang out or go have lunch together, or you know, go hang out in the park and play guitars together or something like that. And I think it was like Jordan said, it was a process of building trust. But then I think inherently in poetry and poets themselves, they see the world in such a different and unique way. Mm-hmm. And they are so eloquent with the way that they see the world. And I think out of any group of young teenagers that we could have assembled together, they were all just very giving and open books, because they, you know, they believe in the poems that they write and the things that they want to talk about, and they're not scared to share, you know, and they want to empower other people to feel the same. So it was a process of definitely building relationships, and you know, that takes time, but it was so strange with this cast. We all just kind of clicked really quickly, and it all just felt very organic. And I think a big part of it as well is that, you know, it wasn't some big film crew. It was basically me, Jordan, and camera. So every time we filmed them with them, it was quite intimate. And, you know, we built the trust that way as well.
I'm thinking about the time that you spent with them, and then also thinking about the opportunity to maybe get too close to your protagonists, to your subjects, especially when it comes to young people. I mean, they're just like smart and super precious and like excited about the world. It's probably very difficult to separate yourself and not turn into more of like a mentor. You know, you're still have to be objective in your filmmaking. Did that ever create any conflict for you in the team or separately?
Not really. You know, I think we were very mindful of wanting to be objective as filmmakers. I think we didn't want to impart our viewpoints. I think one of the things we loved about working with the poets is we had this this stimulus to draw from their poetry. So we would hear something that they would be talking about in their poetry, and that was sort of the a thread to pull on in terms of what we would like to explore. Mm-hmm. So I think that was having their poetry as a baseline was obviously very helpful, because that allowed us to know what were the directions we wanted to go in. But to your question, I think we did I think we've done enough projects and worked with talent or people in front of the camera in the past. And I think it's just something that is intuitive and is something you just develop over time. And, you know, there's definitely moments when you're filming and someone will be telling you something that's really hard and really heartbreaking. And, you know, you're holding the camera, but at the same time, your heart is breaking for them as well. And I think Matt and I would just always go back to sort of the greater importance of the film was to share these stories and want to do them justice and do it honestly and do it accurately. And so I think, yeah, we never really had an issue where it was we couldn't do both, be a support figure, be someone who they could trust and a mentor in some ways, perhaps, if we hoped that they got that. But also, I think we also were able to balance the line of being filmmakers and being a vessel for them to share their stories.
I think from my perspective, and as we said before, it has been such a collaborative process. So we would go in, we would film something, and then, you know, like a week later, we'd be like, hey, there was like a lot of conversation between us and the poets throughout the entire process, and be like, hey, we're pursuing this line of story. Like, are you comfortable going there? And I think another thing that really helped us through the filmmaking process was we gave each of them their own camera, which you see throughout the film, where they film themselves. And at the end of every week, we get 100 hours of footage, and we would go through that footage that they would share with us, and that would instigate story points, or we'd see a new poem being written for the first time, and we'd follow up with that, like, hey, do we want to talk about this, and what does this mean, and stuff like that. And I think it was, yeah, like, that's why we keep saying it's like all of our films, because it was such a collaborative process. It wasn't us like, hey, we filmed these scenes, you'll see the movie in like a year from now. It was more just like, we were in contact with them weekly.
Did either of you have like familiarity with in working with teenagers outside of the activism movement?
I mean, we both worked in the primarily in the music industry, or in terms of filmmaking. A lot of our work has been done in the music industry. So we've worked with not definitely some teenagers, but I think just young artists in general, whether they're in their early 20s. I think the idea of vulnerability, of you know, connecting with people through art is something that's very universal. So I think, you know, it was definitely a new experience working with 5 young people. You know, 16 to 18 was definitely something a little bit new for us, and we learned a lot in the process and grew in the process as well. But I don't think it was that foreign, because I think so much of what we've done in the past was about forming, you know, building bonds with people, and a lot of the time through art, which is something that we're both passionate about.
Yeah. How's the reception of the documentary affected the students?
I don't know. I think it's still, you know, we're still early in our festival run. I think there's definitely been, you know, Jason, Amari, and Virginia, who are at Santa Barbara, and we're on the red carpet with Rosario Dawson, and
Right.
she's been so generous with resharing things on her socials. So there's definitely, you know, I remember when Jason, I believe it was, you know, she started following him. You know, there's clearly a little bit of excitement there. I think so much of this is just about feeling validation that your story is important, that, you know, that your story matters, and that people can connect with your life. So I think it's all been really positive. And there's been so much love and support for the film and all the stories. You know, not speaking on behalf of the poets, but I believe it's been a really positive one for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think I remember our first rough cut screening with them, and at the end of that, there was definitely a little bit of apprehension, maybe a little bit of insecurity. They're like, "Oh wow, you guys did this, this, and this. This is like," there were some tears, but they all just felt like they were open books, and they were like, "This is an important message for us to share." So like, it's cool. And that was our rough cut screening just with the poets, and they all signed off on it. And then I remember the poets that did make it up to Santa Barbara, they just had the most amazing time and just felt so validated. So it was an incredible experience. Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering with in post, when you have 5 subjects, right? How difficult is it to balance which story you're going to? I mean, you know, talk to us like we're 5-year-olds, like in the editing process. How hard is it to balance and to choose? There's so much to work with here. How did you talk yourself and each other through that?
I would say it was very hard. I would say the editing process of this was the most difficult, because we had 5 amazing stories, right? But then how do you craft that into a narrative that switches between these stories, you know, every beat? And that was tricky. And I think, you know, there was a lot of stuff that didn't make it, but I think it was just the process of doing our due diligence on every bit that we thought was important and thought that would make a difference in people's lives. And then we compiled all of those together and then tried to figure out a structure in which we could make it a compelling movie for somebody to watch and kind of all make sense and track for 90 minutes or whatever it is. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge. I feel like the editing, you know, because we would go out, it was myself and Jordan, we'd go shoot, and then pretty much we would shoot on a weekend and then edit during the week, and then we go out, shoot the next weekend, edit during the week. So we kind of knew what was happening as we were going, which was helpful, but also quite daunting, because you would be tracking a certain storyline and then something new would happen, or they would write this new amazing poem and we'd be like, oh, but that's amazing, we should definitely include that. So we just kept getting these amazing things, and we're like, how do you pick and choose, you know? So it was tricky, but and
then a global pandemic happened in the middle of post.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in closing, I'm just wondering, we're going to be showing this film to a lot of students. It's going to get a full adult audience screening as well, of course, but we are taking it into our education arm.
Oh, that's amazing.
What do you hope students will take away from this project, or the teens themselves?
I think for me, I mean, I remember being their age. It was a little while ago, but I think my main takeaway from the film, and there were so many subjects within this film, even though I'm older than the people that are in it or the people that will possibly watch this, they still resonate with me. And I think the thing that I took away is, like, nobody's alone. Like, you know, you might be going through a tough time and feel like it's only happening to you, but that's not true at all. Like, you know, there's so many people out there that are going through similar things. And I think my hope is that people just feel a sense of community and that they're not struggling alone.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, Jason has a line towards the end of the film that he says that everyone's story is valid. And I think the idea that even if we may come from different backgrounds, even if we may have different experiences, there's a sense of you know, universality, universalness to some of the themes in the movie. And I think the idea is that hopefully through art, through talking about it, through sharing your experiences, whether that's through poetry or just talking to your friends, we can learn from each other and we can feel that we're connected, and that, to Matt's point, that we're not alone. And so it's surprising sometimes, I think, even as filmmakers, there's so many themes in the movie that we were connecting with, and we had completely different backgrounds to some of the poets. But I think just in terms of, by sharing it, talking about it, I think we were able to grow and take things away from it. And I think that's hopefully, especially for a young audience, it's really just, you know, hopefully people can connect with the movie and really to the poets, because they're the stars and they're the ones that were brave enough to sort of share their stories. So I think the biggest thing is, you know, is connecting and knowing that, and to Matt's point, that, you know, we're all in this together, and no one's alone.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. Jordan and Matt, thank you so much for joining us. And our DocLands audience, we appreciate you being here and listening into this conversation and watching the film. Enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.